A few days ago, when I wandered through the pages of strange sites that carry away the mystery of a good half of mystical lovers, something strange happened to me. I can say that in my 34 years I have quite healthy life plans and live a full life. I saw a lot too. Interest in this area emerged spontaneously, thanks to the article about Deep Web and Darknet. And so, having tasted the fruit of the secrets of the network, I plunged into research. All that I read and saw by me passed through the prism of critical thinking, and the mind endured an unequivocal verdict: bullshit. A skeptical attitude to everything paranormal has long settled in my mind and, as I thought, nothing can change my opinion. But I was wrong. I was naive and stupid. How could I bury questions in the distant corners of the mind without answers that tormented my mind in my youth, about the greatness of the universe and the mysteries of the universe? How could I forget about the existence of hundreds of theories about space and time? Now, 2 days after the incident, I'm trying to restore the events in a correct chronology, for chronology, as a concept familiar to me before, was now something new. November 2, 2017. This is the key date around which the events described below have occurred. I knowingly use the word around. In the future you will understand this. So, there was a cloudy and dank day. My research on the web was covered with mysterious and sometimes insane images of gloomy sites with mysterious inscriptions and links. It was the 3rd hour in the afternoon, when another site made my hair move. On the black screen of the browser, I saw myself sitting in an old chair behind an empty table in a room lit by outgoing light. I wrote something. The blood drained from my face. My ears rustled. I felt that fear spread all over my body. The sound of a scratching pencil echoed in the brain. The view angle allowed me to see my face, which was smiling slightly. Secondary paralysis was over, replaced by bewilderment, and analytical areas of reason began to return to life. A sharp surge of adrenaline mobilized me and made me jump up from the table. I looked around my real room. What the hell? Is this someone's joke? Camera in the room and montage? Or a record made earlier? The echo rang again. The next look in the screen made me stunned. From the screen of the monitor I looked at myself with eyes full of amazement and fear. Everything swam. The ringing in my ears was replaced by a noise and my head was squeezed by a vice. Apparently I lost consciousness. He came to himself, lying next to the table in my own room, lit by bright sunlight. The wall clock showed 10 in the morning. Was he lying almost a day? I was very thirsty. The computer blinked the sleep sensor. Staggering, I went to the kitchen and, oh gods! I was overwhelmed with heat. Electronic clock calendar in the corridor showed October 31, 2013. Delirium, of course. In 2013, I still did not live here. Clock failure probably. I moved towards the kitchen and glanced briefly at the hallway. In the hallway, the scream broke out of the bowels of my being. In reflection, a very fat bald man looked at me, about 45 years old. Where does reality end and delusions begin? I clearly began to feel the faintness of what was happening. What's happening? Am I asleep? Am I still unconscious? Again a growing noise in the ears. I pull my hand to the reflection synchronously pulls my hand. The noise goes into the ringing, everything swims. I come to myself in the hallway in front of the mirror. I focus my eyes on the calendar clock. November 3, 2017, 2 hours and 20 minutes of the night. The apartment is dark. I find the switch and turn on the light. In reflection, I am I slapped myself on the cheeks. What's happening? Is everything real now? Hope so. The computer did not turn on. The shock of what happened has been hampered to this day. I do not remember when I lost it. Woke up at 11:30. Outside the window it was cloudy and dank. I called my friend from the next door. He told him everything. Victor, expressing his apprehension with the situation, added one more link to my strange story. A very fat man of 45 years lived before me in this apartment. A Reddit user who shared the story that happened to one of his friends in July 2015. His friend is a regular deep web user, and he would buy loads of things like stolen Apple products, drugs, etc. One fine day, like usual, he ordered drugs from deep web, not from his usual seller but a new one. He asked the seller to deliver the drugs in a movie case or something that his mom wouldn't notice. One of his biggest mistakes that he didn't realize until what happened next. The package arrived, but to his surprise, inside it, there was a bit of paper that read, "Something has happened. If I were to send it to you, it could be traced back to me, and we would both be caught. Meet me at the elementary school at 7 o'clock. We will just do it in person." He went by telling his mom he was staying at his friend's, the Reddit user, home, and his friend warned him to take a knife if the things went south. He reached the school and noticed a man in a Jeep with the plates covered in duct tape. He got down to get the drugs and left in his car after paying him. To his surprise, he could see the man's car following him till he reached his neighborhood, so to shake him off and leading him to his house, which would be a bad idea, he made some random turns, and when he lost his tail, he pulled into the garage. But the serious incident happened that night. He could hear the sound of a car engine. Two men were seated in the same car that followed him. The driver was the drug dealer. This second one had messed up hair, a trashy shirt, and while it was hard to see, my friend could almost make out a scar from a massive burn on the side of his neck or his face, wrote the Reddit user. He was watching them from the window, and the second one often looked at the window he was standing, and he lost his cool. Now he didn't care about the consequences and called the police after moving away from the window. The police asked him to grab a weapon to defend himself. Finally, he could see a figure coming out of his mom's room with a knife in his hand. With full force, he was charging towards him after shutting the door behind him. But he grabbed a pot and hit on his head. After turning on the light, he noticed it was the second guy from the car and stabbed him in the shoulder with the knife he dropped. Then in few minutes he could hear the police siren and both the men were arrested. Reddit user says, "But my friend's mum had been killed. Her throat had been slit, and she had 23 stab wounds, and duct tape covering her mouth. He was charged with possession of drugs and lost his mom because of his actions. He would never ever buy drugs from deep web." Hey there, person who happens to be seeing this. I don't know how long this story would be on the internet, but the current date is August 15th, 2011. If you're reading this a few years from then, well, I'm not surprised. I am probably not making any sense, am I? Here, let me elaborate a bit. I am the living definition of having no life. I spend most of my days on the computer, while I'm not at school or work. I mostly just hang around YouTube or 4chan or whatever I really feel like, honestly. Although, I have always been a little behind, even with all the time I spent on the computer. Just a few weeks ago, I heard about this Slenderman guy. He kidnaps children or something? I would like to add that once I started reading about him, I was terrified of the Slenderman for a day or so. This was mainly because I first heard about him during the middle of the night. You know, when your mind plays those tricks on you. Once a year, me and my friends would get together for a camping trip. We would stay in a small campsite in the middle of the woods. It belonged to my friend Amy's dad. One of my friends were telling the story of Slenderman over a campfire. We were all trying to scare each other, as we did every year. A lot of creepypastas were brought up as well. None of us ended up falling asleep that night. It was kind of funny, really. We all had scared each other so bad that the sound of a crabapple hitting the ground made us jump. It's funny if you think about it, how the smallest sounds can make the mind jump to so many ridiculous conclusions. But I digress. After all, this isn't an analysis of the human psyche, now is it? Later the next day we had all returned home. All of us were exhausted after. As soon as I got home, I was out like a light. I awoke around 2 a.m., or was it 3? Maybe 4? Well, it was sometime early in the morning. I had decided to check my role-playing forum. I had started up several role-plays on there. My username was Immortal Being. I thought it was cool at the time. I looked at my notifications to see that I had a lot to catch up on. There were at least 5 new pages in the out-of-character section and 1 in the in-character section of my role-play. I called it Fortuna, Battle for the Kings. It is your basic fantasy role-play with the main villain, a demon from another universe, and the innocent kingdom in peril. As I began to scroll through the pages in the OAK, out of character, section, I realized that there were actually 6 pages added, not 5. At first, I thought nothing of it. People are always posting, after all. As I scrolled through the absurd amount of off-topic discussions going on, I realized something. There was a poster who I did not recognize. The user had the default picture of a mugshot of a blank character in a small box. Their title was Senior Member. Everything was fine. However, his signature was empty, but his username struck me as rather odd. The name was User. Normally people take their username as a way of identifying themselves, but I've seen weirder names, some even consisting of just symbols. Once I had got to the last page, I typed up a post. If I remember correctly, it went something like, "Hey user, you seem to post a lot on here. Why not apply a character?" I pressed the submit post button and waited for a response. I then immediately refreshed the page, not for any particular reason. I wasn't expecting a response in 5 seconds. However, there it was. A response. How is that possible? I asked myself. After all, there is no way anyone could read that post, even if it was just a sentence, and reply as fast as he did. However, as naive as I was, I put that thought out of mind and began to talk to the guy. He would go on to tell me how he's been watching the thread for a while. I even got him to submit a character. He was accepted and I put him on the front page under the accepted characters tab. We ended up talking all night. He was really nice. User was highly interested in my life. Nothing too personal, though. They were like how I came up for the idea of the role play, what I want to do after school is done. If I had any pets, just some basic breaking the ice conversations. I asked him some questions, but he was always vague about the answers. I asked him when he came across the forum and he said, "Oh, a few years ago." Now that I think about it, I don't remember seeing a join date below his picture. The join date is normally under everyone's picture, showing the date they signed up to the forum. But I just assumed there was some privacy settings that could turn it off. Before I could ask him myself, he had to go. It was around 6 a.m., for what reason I did not ask, so I typed bye. He responded back with the same generic message. After taking a well-deserved nap, I awoke. Being a Saturday, I didn't have work or school, so I spent my whole day with my face glued to the screen of my monitor. I went back to the forum around noon or so, checking my roleplay to see if user had responded yet or not. As I got onto my computer, I pressed the power button and waited for it to boot up. However, it would not turn on, just a black screen appeared on my monitor, but the light behind the power button was on, indicating that the computer was in fact running. I got under the computer desk and looked around the mess of cords that lay underneath. The connection from the monitor to the computer was fine, but I took it as a glitch of some sort, so I turned off the power strip everything was connected to. As I did, all the life was sucked from the machinery around me, the computer fan shut down, the speakers made low-toned, popping sort of noise, and the printer's ever-noisy actions stopped. After a few seconds, I switched on the power switch and everything came back to life. My speakers were set, monitor on, printer was being noisy as usual, and my computer was alive again. This time, upon turning on the computer, I was brought to the Windows startup screen. Sorry Mac users, but I'm a PC. As I logged into my account, I clicked on the small internet icon, which for some reason brought me back to the forum instead of my regular homepage. But that's not the weirdest part. I was immediately brought to a small chat room box. In it the only two people were I and user. I should have shut down the computer and just gotten away. However, like any person, my curiosity was piqued. How did you do that? I asked user, hoping that there was some sort of logical explanation. I waited at my computer, my fingers were anxiously tapping the computer desk waiting for a response. After about a minute of nothing, I began to type again. Yet as I started, the chat box closed out of itself. My initial reaction was to shut down the computer and leave the room, but then, as my finger hovered over the power button, I saw a user. His icon was on my list of friends, even though I never added him to my friends list. With this new information, I began to think that user might have been a hacker and released some sort of computer virus into my system. That he, somehow without knowing anything about my computer, hacked into it and caused this mess, so I clicked on his icon, to go to his user page to see if there was anything else suspicious about him that I could find. As the page loaded, I was shocked to see what had come up. There was no profile picture, no bio or interest list, no friends list or subscribed threads tab. No. There was just a single message over a black background. This page cannot be found. You will be redirected to the forum front page in a few moments. I clicked his icon again, but every time I did the same message came up. This page cannot be found. After several tries, I checked my Fortuna roleplay. He did exist after all. I talked to him for hours on the OAK. Once the page had loaded, I noticed there were no box to write a new post in. Instead there was a message saying, "This thread has been locked." I began to panic, not because of user, but because of all my hard work was shut down for no reason. At least that's what I thought at the time. As I investigated the issue, I noticed there were several posts from a moderator, Shizun124. I read her initial post. It read, "Stop spamming the OAK. I've tolerated you guys enough with the off-topic discussions, but this is ridiculous, Immortal. I've warned you enough. Locked." What is she talking about? I shouted, raging at this crime against my own creativity and time. But as I scrolled up and through several pages, I realized why she had locked my roleplay. All those comments, of me talking to user, all of user's responses, were gone. There were even some posts by members of the role play, before it was locked, asking who I was talking to. Who am I talking to? User. I was talking to user. What is going on? I became increasingly upset as I came across pages upon pages of just me. Just posts of me talking to no one. I panicked and I went off to the forum search bar. I typed in the name user and went under the members filter. No results were found. After asking around the forum, receiving no helpful answers, a lot of people ended up blocking me. Even my life on that forum was over. All my friends ended up blocking me. No one would talk to me. Everyone thought I was crazy. So, I went to option 2, Google. I searched hackers user and user virus and any other things that I could associate with this user. I even went on to Yahoo Answers, but I never got a response from my question. It's almost as if no one saw it. I went back to the forum to see that I've been banned. A permanent ban from the website with my IP address saved into the forum's memory. 50 role plays, 100 or so friends, and over 10,000 posts. Everything I had left for himself there, gone. I couldn't post. I couldn't talk to anyone. I was shut out from my whole online life, my name dragged into the mud. At this point I was on the verge of tears. I didn't have much of a social life outside of the forum. No, I didn't have too many friends. The ones I had outside the computer I didn't like sometimes due to the various things they do. I was the one that would get the most picking on. My only escape route, one I had worked on for several years in fact, was gone. Then, a loud, sharp groupings of beeps came from my speakers. I turned them all the way down, but the noise didn't stop. I covered my ears. My eyes were closed tight. Then the noise stopped, just stopped with no explanation of where they came from or why they stopped. But as I opened my eyes, a small chat box was opened. It was a box from the forum with my username and user. I didn't know what to say, what to type. Nothing came to mind except for utter rage at user. I wasn't even sure it was all his fault, but something convinced me to start typing. All I could think of to type was, why? There were several moments without any response. I decided to close out of it and walk away, but as I did, the chat box just popped up again. I heard the little pop noise it made and I rushed back into the room. He had responded. Nothing else. Just 3 ellipses. I then began to type back. I typed, what's that supposed to mean? You ruined years of work. Don't you have anything to say for yourself? I pressed enter, and I planned on waiting for a response, but then the high-pitched beeping returned, so I shut off my speakers again, turning the dial all the way down on the control speaker. Then it occurred to me, I had already turned off my speakers previously. Not through the computer, no, I turned them off myself. How could my speakers have turned themselves back on? Then, user responded again. Goodbye. The chat box closed itself out, but not only that. The entire computer began to shut down, the monitor, my camera, the computer itself, and the printer. It all shut down. My heart was racing. I was paralyzed at what had happened, not moving. I tried to compose myself. I began to get up, to be interrupted by that damn high-pitched beeping. Again it was from the speakers. I nearly ran over to the speakers and smashed them with my hand. I didn't have time to move though. The entire desk flipped over and collapsed onto me, leaving me there under its weight. 1 year ago, that's when everything I told you occurred. I never touched a computer since. My cousin is the one writing all this down for me. He believes me entirely. He has a job as a ghost hunter and believes that user is some sort of spirit that had found its way into the internet. That's as best as I can put it. He sent this out and posted it on several websites, as a warning. If you see user or anyone named user, stay away. Stay far away, and God help you if he finds you.